that doesn't believe in ghosts. Poltergeists, apparitions, werewolves, vampires, witches, gremlins, ghoulies, demons, goblins, ogres, or swamp creatures. He's a skeptical robot that doesn't believe in ghosts. Poltergeists, apparitions, werewolves, vampires, witches, gremlins, ghoulies, demons, goblins, ogres, or swamp creatures. Ogres are skeptical robots that doesn't believe in ghosts. Poltergeists, apparitions, werewolves, vampires, witches, gremlins, ghoulies, demons, goblins, ogres, or swamp creatures. Ogres are swamp creatures.
Hello. Thank you for joining us today. I am Luigi Greenberg, and this is the 4th episode of Skeptical Robot, a show that is, man, you'd think it was just completely dedicated to the Amityville Horror, but it is dedicated to debunking the paranormal, and we are still discussing the Amityville Horror. This is part 4. But, folks, this is going to be the last episode dedicated to the Amityville Horror, and we will be moving on. So I'm sure that everyone is very happy, but there is still a lot to discuss tonight. And joining me, as always, is the vampire hunter, Corndiff.
Hello. How are you?
Hey, Corndiff, how's it going, buddy?
Doing great. Glad to be here. How are you, sir?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. Let's see here. So, do you remember where we left off last episode?
I'm betting you know the answer to that already. I do not. I'm forgetful. Memory of a goldfish. I have.
Tisk, Corndiff.
Sound like all my teachers.
So disappointed in you. I really did kind of see from episode 1 that I was just going to keep asking that question just because I knew it was always going to be the same answer. But that's okay. Yeah. There is so much fucking information in this story. I would be pretty damn surprised if there was anyone who could just tell you exactly where we picked up and left off from every episode. Let's see.
There's definitely a lot to it.
There is a lot to it. I tried my best with that recap, and I realize I still have to cut out a lot of stuff. But basically, I really wanted to stop the story right before we get to the movie. The book has come out, and essentially, why isn't my mouth moving? Oh, and then I have opened my mouth and hiccuped. That was a weird feeling. I can't imagine what that sounded like over a microphone.
Shout out hiccups.
Okay. Man, why is it weird? Fantastic start to today's show. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can
hit like.
Fix this. Yes, like and subscribe. People,
this is your chance.
Yeah.
If you do it later, you're going to have to scroll down and you'll miss something. And then you'll feel like a real shithead. Don't do that.
You're going to miss part of the story. Okay, let's see. Nope. Okay. Well, no, everything is exactly where it needs to be. My mouth is just not moving. Um,
What does the
all right.
intro say? Goldfish, ogres, and swamp people?
Uh, no. Okay. So, man, I forget sometimes that you were not a Stern fan. Great question though. Okay. The the intro is a homage to a prank call that was made on the Stern Show by Richard Christie, and he calls in a new age psychic show, a radio show,
Okay.
and it was on Halloween. And he says they were talking about ghosts, and he says to this woman who is taking all these corny calls about bullshit psychic stuff. And he says, I grew up in a haunted house, and in my house, we had ghosts, poltergeists, apparitions, ghoulies, goblins,
Ghoulies.
ogres,
Oh, shit.
swamp creatures, vampires, werewolves, and he keeps going and going until the lady gets annoyed and cuts him off. And that is one of my favorite phone calls. I love that phone call so much. I mean, I remember like getting lightheaded the first time that I heard it, laughing my ass off, and I thought that would make a good song.
Yeah.
And so that is what she is saying. Those are the lyrics to my intro song. She is saying ogres and swamp creatures. At one point, I think it's an AI song. At one point, I think they actually say ogres twice. It's
Oh,
not
that's what
clear.
I think that's the one I'm thinking. Ogres, and swamp people.
Creatures, yeah,
Swamp creature. Yeah.
to make a chorus out of it. But yeah, that's just really, it's one of the most hilarious prank calls I've ever heard, and I listen to it pretty regularly.
That's awesome.
All right. So anyway, let's get to it, brother. All right. So for anybody who's new here, um, hey, let's throw this up here on the board.
If you're new here, hit subscribe.
Mars celebrates 1 month of membership. Thank you, Mars. Thank you so much. Um, da, da, da. Space Chief congratulating Mars, which is, hey, helpful. Hey, be nice to people. Why not? Okay, so let's talk about this. Yeah, for anybody who's new here, the show is about debunking the paranormal. Did kind of paint myself into a corner there, but I think we are going to be expanding that as time goes on. I've done a little bit of research and talked to some other people about some good ideas of expanding beyond the paranormal or whatever you might. Why my fucking mouth? It's just weird when I look at myself and I feel like
Bah, bah,
something's
bah,
wrong.
bah, bah, bah.
So I'm gonna over enunciate.
I will join you in that. The audience will remember this episode.
For lasting 6 hours as we talk slowly. So yeah. For those of you who are new here, the show has so far been focused on debunking the paranormal. We're actually going to expand on that, but our first few subjects are going to be the Amityville Horror, and then after today, we are going to jump off into a chronological discussion, tracking, debunking of the Warrens. They have about 6 or 7 cases, and that they really tried to capitalize on and make money off of, and those are the ones that we're going to focus on. Numero uno is Annabelle. Um,
Love that
we
story.
It's an interesting one. It is an interesting one. I
Coming
hate
of age
to
tale.
hate to friends become enemies, enemies become friends. Um, I I've actually been doing a lot of research on Annabelle this week, and it's really kind of funny. Um, well, let's not talk too much about it.
Tell me more.
But
Okay.
yeah, it's just really funny. I kind of found out some new things I didn't know. Fascinating things, interesting things that a skeptic would jump on. But anyway,
That's what we like over here.
yeah, and we have already talked a little bit about it. Yes, the entire concept of Annabelle was stolen from an episode of The Twilight Zone, and
Yeah.
we will even tell you all of the connections. I'll even play parts of the episode that were directly stolen, as, and the biggest one is the name. Annabelle was taken from the Living Doll episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that was a disappointment.
And that's I feel like that's also a theme of our show here, is that
Disappointment.
you got to leave grifting to the professionals. If you're new to the grifting field, you got to really step up your game and be more creative. We have too many examples of people trying to grift and just not being creative enough. Yeah. Anyway, so all right, so let's get back into the Amityville Horror. So what we know is that there was a house on Long Island in New York. There were 6 murders. One person was responsible for all the murders, a member of the family.
Good shot.
Hold on. I'm going to show this here. Okay. So, at a theater near me, thank you very much for commenting, but you are correct. Talking Tina was the name of the doll. The mother's name was Annabelle. Yeah, so we are going to we'll dive into that one next week, but just want to give everyone a little bit of a heads up on that. Oh, and I forgot, the whole reason I brought that up was to also let everyone know that I am going to, or I've been working on releasing a short video to help promote that episode. Oh, hey, Hamhead. Oh man, Hamhead is very generous around here. Gifted 1 Luigi Greenberg membership, and Dylan from somewhere got that membership.
What?
Yay!
Hell yeah!
All right, Dylan rocks. Okay, so thank you so much. Yes, so I'm actually working on a short video series that I'm going to be releasing as members only content, but the first couple I'm going to release publicly, just so to kind of entice people to come over. And they're going to be just little short subjects that I find interesting, that I think can be related to the topics of discussion for this show. I'm going to be calling it Luigi Greenberg's Strange World. And they're just going to be little short, I guess you can call them a vignette, but it's just going to be a little short video, but it's going to be a documentary about something in our world that's pretty strange. And the first one I'm going to be doing is going to be promoting the Annabelle episode. And we're going to be talking about a very, very creepy doll that has no supernatural stories attached to it, but it's one of the scariest things I've ever heard in my life.
Really?
So, nothing supernatural. Totally fucking creepy and weird and scary.
I like it already.
Yeah, it's really another one of those topics that I like to talk about at parties that everyone thinks I'm a fucking weirdo. And it actually involves a very famous celebrity. Yeah. So hopefully I'll actually be done with that tonight, and
It's not
I'll
Diddy, is it?
that tomorrow. No. Okay. But I'll tell you. Well, no, maybe I won't tell you. All right. It'll come out tomorrow.
Okay.
I really want to talk about it, but I worked on it all day today because it's a very interesting subject. So anyway, back to Amityville. So the story so far, of course, is that there was this murder, and then this family moved in. Everything is suspicious about the family. Can we agree on that?
Oh yeah, they're sketchy.
Right. Yeah, pretty sketchy. None of their timelines line up when they tell their story. Their story changes frequently, but what they allege is that they were besieged and tortured by a bunch of ghosts and spirits in this house. Man, I'm gonna move my mic. I wonder if my mic's in the way of my mouth. God, it's really fucking bugging me. Okay, so can you hear me? Okay, did that change anything in my audio? Okay. All right. So
You got a little quieter for a second, but no, you're good now.
Okay, hold on. There we go. All right. So the Lutz family moves into this house, and then they move out after 28 days. But 28, we also find out that 28 days is only the latest number that they're telling people after they told people 10 days. The story just changes constantly. But in the house, they saw all kinds of. Oh, here we go. All right. So I'm a little quiet. Thank you very much, Duke Ed McMuffin. Let's see here.
Oh, you're a little quiet compared to the corn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How are we doing now? Let me know,
Huh?
please.
Huh? Testing.
I've,
1, 2, 3.
I have been besieged by audio ghosts, much like the Lutzes. They are going to drive me away from all of my audio equipment. So
far, it's the spookiest thing about this story.
Yeah.
The audio.
Okay. So, oh, great. Thank you. Okay. Much better. Beautiful. So, the Lutzes are now, shit. They've moved out and they start trying to find people to investigate the house in order to learn what's going on. Then they get approached by a lawyer. The lawyer happens to be the murderer's lawyer.
Yeah.
He actually says to them, why don't we do business together and write a book, maybe make some movies? Let's see what happens. You never know. And he signed this contract. They look at the contract, and everyone seems to agree on this part that when they went to go sign that contract, the contract included a 5% share of the profits to the murderer. And they back away and they say, no, we don't feel right about doing that. Do whatever you want to do, but we're not going to be a part of it.
Right.
So then for some reason, 3 weeks later, they convene together again and hold a press conference for local news to tell local news that there's a haunted house and that they're going to start seeking out people to investigate the house. Again, stories don't really match up on this one because they say they were threatened to do it. The lawyer says, I didn't threaten anybody. They wanted to do it. But then there's another wrench in this story in that 3 days before that press conference, George Lutz, the father and head of this household, male head of this household, sought out a paranormal investigator named Stephen Kaplan. Stephen Kaplan markets himself as a vampire hunter. After 3 days, George Lutz fires Stephen Kaplan and says, hey, man, I didn't know you were a vampire hunter. That's fucking crazy, and I don't want any part of you. Yeah. Stephen Kaplan tells a very different story and much more believable story in that when he sought him out, Steve Kaplan confronted him and said, I don't believe you. I think that you're saying a bunch of buzzwords and you're using a bunch of lingo that you think I'm going to bite on, and that reeks of a fraud. So I'm going to investigate the house, and if I find out anything's wrong with it, I'm going to make it public because the public is now involved, and he had gotten interviewed already and made his own statements because honestly, it was just a famous thing, and anyone associated was getting interviewed. Yeah. All right. So then after that happens, Stephen Kaplan goes on a mission to expose that this whole thing that got all of this attention is a fraud. In the meantime, George Lutz gets introduced to the famous Warrens by a 19-year-old intern, and they are convinced that the Warrens are going to do this bang-up job paranormal investigating on the house. And they allow them to do it. They actually do 2 different investigations. And what do you think they found, Corndiff?
Oh, no. It's probably not a whole lot.
No. The house was infested with ghouls and ghoulies and spirits and all kinds of, I don't know, evil shit, whatever.
Boogabears.
Yeah. And they had Babadooks. I don't know why I just thought of that.
That's a good one.
So they claim that there's all kinds of spirits in the house. However, No one else sees these things. No one else feels these things except one other psychic. But then they spend the night in the house and they set up a infrared camera to take pictures throughout the night, and they get a picture of what looks like a little boy peeking around a corner in the middle of the night.
Terrifying picture. I remember that.
Yeah, I'll admit, I mean, I'm a skeptic, and that's a scary looking picture that even when I saw it, I was like, well, there has to be an explanation for that. I don't know what it is, but it's not a ghost. I know that.
Yeah.
But it does look creepy. Turns out a lot of people really looked into it and did a little bit of digging, found out there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for it.
Oh yeah.
And hey, I'm not going to get too far in the details, but yeah, there was an explanation for it, and it had to do with someone who didn't get a lot of attention, who was there, and the stock of the film that they used. So anyway, after that, William Weber, the lawyer, shows back up after 10 months actually, and says, I want to investigate the house again, but by myself without the Warrens. And he goes and recruits a completely different ghost hunter named Hans Holzer.
Okay.
Hans Holzer has now found a completely different set of circumstances as to what is haunting the house. And he believes it is now haunted by an Indian chief, one singular Indian chief, and his horse.
And the horse. Okay,
And
that's
remember,
not
the
a
horse
bad
was
deal.
in the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah.
The horse was who was shitting in the toilets. And if you missed that part,
Yeah.
folks, that's in part 1. Part of what the Lutzes claimed were that the ghosts were making the toilets dirty. Look it up. I didn't make any of that shit up. So then, you know what? I'm sorry. This just gets me. That's my buddy Hackride. How? It's a question, but we were also talking about an Indian. So how? Huh?
It's appropriate.
Hacka. All right. So then, after the Indian chief is found, he goes and tries to get a scientific confirmation from the city council that the house was built on top of an Indian burial ground, and they tell him, no, it's not, dummy. And he says, well, I'm convinced there's an Indian there. So whatever you say, whatever, there's an Indian there. So
Yeah.
it turns out there actually was an Indian recovered near there, but at the same time, the
Recently?
local Indian tribe, yeah, it's like 100 years ago, something like that, or the early 1900s. But it turns out the local Indian tribe tells Hans Holzer, well, the thing is, the Indians didn't bury their dead near the water. The house is on the water, so chances are that's not really going to happen. But he
Oh.
gets an advocate from the from the Indian tribe who says, yeah, but think of erosion. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Do you think that Indian chief had a science degree in soil depletion?
I mean, probably not.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kidding. That was a rhetorical question. But he didn't speak as a scientist. He spoke as an Indian chief and said, well, think of erosion. Ghosts travel with erosion. And if there was a body that landed there, well, maybe there really is a ghost.
There's a chance.
Yeah. So then we actually looked up one of Hans Holzer's books, and it turns out that Hans Holzer writes softcore porn.
What the hell? Oh yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah. The Heather
And,
Confessions of a Witch.
Yes. There was a naked chick on a book written by Hans Holzer where we actually had to cover up the nipples. So let me just stop there and say, where you leaning, Corn? Was this real?
I don't think so at this point. I'm still interested, but it's been rough. The hearing it all debunked, because it does, and it's not even debunked. It's just the shit. Everything, when you hear it all together, you're like, wow, there's so much other shit going on that makes this highly unlikely to have been anything at all.
That's a great way of saying it. I feel like I'm not putting an effort toward debunking. I'm only putting an effort to stating facts and, testimony
Yeah.
and logic. If you want to call that debunking, I guess it does qualify, but I'm really not putting an effort toward the specifics of this instance other than just simply saying, well, George, let's you say you saw the footprints of a pig after seeing the ghost of a pig in snow on this day. Well, it didn't snow within a month of that day. So, if you want to call that debunking, it's just really, I'm trying to stick to facts here, objective
Yeah.
facts.
Yeah.
All right. So then an article comes out by Good Housekeeping that details the story of the Lutzes. But the Lutzes didn't give permission for that article. It was the lawyer. The lawyer is the one who actually took their story and tried to sell it as their literary agent. And Good Housekeeping published it. Then the Lutzes sued Good Housekeeping, Weber, he had a ghostwriter. I forget that guy's name actually. So they sue everyone. And what was interesting about that was that I guess I skipped something here. I got to backtrack just a little bit and say that the whole reason that William Weber brought that other psychic to the house was because his book deal was going to die. He had proposed the book deal first, but the Lutzes apparently did not like it. I'm going to say allegedly because you just can't believe anybody in the story. And when they found their own literary agent to write their book, he had trouble convincing his publishing house that there was any need for a second book. So he went and hired new investigators to come up with a new theory, a new perspective. Ah, man. So that's where we are. And that's where we wanted to stop. And that is right before, right after the book comes out. And they are now on a stage for everyone to point out all of the inconsistencies of their stories from past articles to now contradicting the stories that are in the book. And Stephen Kaplan, the vampire hunter, and his wife apparently sit down and they count that there are 113 inconsistencies between stories they've told before and this book.
Oh my God. That's not good.
So here's part of the theme also. I feel like there's two major themes besides debunking that I really want to focus on for this story, at least, maybe others. But for this story, that is that we are still in the year 1970. This is about 78. Okay.
Mhm.
The movie hasn't come out yet. There is so much to this story to expose this as a fraud and a hoax because of all of the lies, the inconsistencies, the lack of creativity with coming up with the hoax in the first place. And what's amazing to me is that, like we said with the grifters, that they aren't creative enough to come up with their own ideas that are, compelling. But then somehow, even though they're not compelling, they are also believed. And so, even with all of this evidence, all of this backstory to say that no one's credible, no one's telling the truth, everyone has an agenda and is willing to lie for it, it continues to actually gain momentum in the zeitgeist, and people believe the story, and then they say they want to make a movie out of it and still call it a true story. That's what's fascinating to me.
It's like
I have
some
no
version of
explanation.
a perfect storm for all that
Yeah,
shit to work out that way.
exactly. And it's just funny to me when you think of I don't know, man. I can't even think of a very good example, but let's just, I don't know. You have all this evidence available to you to point you with almost 99% certainty one direction, but still you want to say, nah, no, I still want to go this other direction. We'll see what happens. Now, again, it all comes down to money. People were able to make money off of this. The publishing house was able to publish the book, make money. The writer made money. Hollywood came knocking and said, "Oh, let's make a movie out of this and call it a true story." So maybe that element of the story is actually building of lies, where someone actually comes in, knows it's fake, knows that everything they're saying is false, but says, well, let's just continue the grift. Let's just keep going. So like you said, snowball, sure, that's probably a better way of saying it, but it is just pretty fascinating that it continued to grow. And then people went saw the movie and believed it. Again, despite all of the evidence to tell you that even though it has this label of true story on it, nothing is true about it. Nothing. And
but I mean,
so,
from a public
yeah.
perspective, it says something about how willing people are to, like, they want to believe this.
Yeah, that's good. They want to believe it. And if there's a buck to be made, someone is going to perpetuate that lie.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. It's sickening. But that's
American.
That's just the way the world goes. So now in the story, we have in our timeline, the book has been published, and now they're getting some attention for a movie. And do you remember who was in the movie?
Ryan Reynolds. I don't remember the guy's name.
You're not wrong.
In the older one, but yeah, he was in one.
You're not wrong. Yeah, he was in the 2005 one. But yes, Thanos' dad was in the first one.
Oh wow.
James Brolin and Lois Lane were in the first one. Margot Kidder. And anyway,
Did not know that.
it becomes a smash hit, and people, like you said, they want to believe this story. But
Yeah.
I really just now realized how stupid I am for having done all of that backstory because I forgot that I actually made a video to give the story so far. So let's just get into it.
Let's watch that video.
Yeah, here we go. Okay. Oh shit.
Hey, you. Did you hit like? Yeah,
You
you.
heard the corn. Okay, here we go. So this is going to be a quick summary of the story so far, and I'll try to scoot through it as fast as I can.
According to George and Kathy Lutz, this home in Amityville, New York, is infested with demons. Their story becomes a best-selling book, and in 1979, film studios unleashed the Amityville Horror movie on an eager public.
I'm Jackie Stone, and this is supposedly where it all happened.
Curious fans of
How hot was Jackie Stone?
Yeah, I was giving her the eye here.
the film descend on Amityville, eager to get a glimpse of the house itself.
Do you believe that all that really happened here?
Yeah, I believe it. I believe in the devil.
Now, why did you come by tonight to look at this house?
We just specifically came from Chicago to see it.
Well, do you believe all the stories?
Yeah, I do.
So I just want to stop there for just a second and just like, can you just imagine living in a house where a bunch of strangers show up on your front doorstep just to look at you?
It's called carolers in Christmas. Around Christmas.
I fucking hate carolers. Yeah. So yeah, I'd hate this too. And it's funny, in a modern world, one of these people would have been shot.
Yeah.
Who knows which one? Yeah.
The movie divides America between those who believe the Lutz's story and those who call it a hoax.
Is it the Amityville Horror or the Amityville Hoax?
It's the Amityville Hoax. There's not a person in Amityville I don't think you'll find that believes it.
The Amityville Horror smashes box office records.
That movie was made for, I think, $3 million. For a long time, it was the biggest low-budget movie ever. They made $100 million for a $3 million investment.
Overnight, George...
Did you hear that?
It's a pretty good return.
That is a pretty good return in 1978. So,
wow, yeah.
yeah, $3 million with a $100 million return.
I'd say
So-
whatever I needed to also.
Yeah, no kidding. And, you know, there was a show, you and I have actually talked about this briefly, the show Penn and Teller's Bullshit.
Mhm.
It's an amazing show, probably my favorite show of all time. And it's a lot like this, where they would debunk stuff, but they would debunk more along the lines of, instead of specific stories, just, you know, categorized things, ghosts, you know, whatever, aliens, you know, just these big things. And every episode was a different category of things, but there was always one prevalent theme: who stands to profit by perpetuating this idea. And I feel like that was just so mind-blowing when I finally realized. I was like, ah, shit, man, that's it. Everyone's just trying to make a buck, and they will lie, cheat, and steal to do it. That's all it is.
Yeah, that without a second thought.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. I need to just let this go.
and Kathy Lutz rocket to stardom.
Introduced this very special couple. They were the owners of that strange house in Amityville. Why did you decide to go public? Because I'm sure in many ways, it will follow you for a long, long, long time.
Well, before we went public, some other people stepped in and did it for us, and there were very widely exaggerated stories in the press, on the media, when it first happened. And in order to correct some of those things and be able to live with ourselves, we had to come forward and tell our story.
Yeah.
So what they're talking about there is that even the Lutzes admitted publicly that the movie was nonsense. Even they said, hey, I mean, we're willing to give you a certain level of bullshit. Don't, don't,
but it was too late. Too many people already believed in it.
And then they said, yeah, we're going to give you this much bullshit, but that's too much bullshit. And that's what they're referring to there with Mr. Merv Griffin.
The Lutz's stardom invites criticism. An army of skeptics hound George and Kathy, and not without reason.
George and Kathy, and even some of the children talked about how the book was embellished and how things were added that really didn't happen, especially when the movie came out. And it's notorious to see something.
Hold on. Did you hear that? Oh, wait. I'm being sincere here, actually.
What?
Hold on. I think I just heard something that I don't think I'd heard before. Hold on.
The Lutz's stardom invites criticism. An army of skeptics hound George and Kathy, and not without reason.
George and Kathy, and even some of the children talked about how the book was embellished and how things were added that really didn't.
Okay, I did hear that. All right, let's keep that in mind, folks, as we move forward. George, Kathy,
and the
kids. Remember that.
Didn't happen, especially when the movie came out. And it's notorious to see something that's a book go to a movie and a lot of things
I'm not kidding. I really didn't hear that before.
change and a lot of things become more frightening.
William Weber, the attorney for Ronald DeFeo, who murdered his family in the house, becomes a leading critic. Their brief discussions with Weber come back to haunt them.
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a recap from last episode, but do you remember what this guy's going to say here, Corndiff?
Oh, I don't. What? I do not.
He's going to say, we conspired together to cause this frenzy, this media frenzy, and we made this hoax together. Now, this is important, so that's just why I'm saying it. I'm emphasizing this just so that nobody misses it. but the Lutzes recorded their conversation with Weber because they didn't trust him. And then they ultimately played those tapes for Laura DiDio, who is now a news reporter. And they say, okay, look, we aren't proud of this. They use those words. They say, we're not proud of this. But yes, we got in this to make money, and we might have embellished a little. Here we go.
They did play me the tape that they had made of their original meetings with William Weber. And they told me, we're not proud of what you're about to hear on this tape. The audio tape of William Weber, George and Kathy.
I reminded her that that's what they said. That's why she repeated me.
You did great.
Lutz was about them discussing book deals, movie deals. William Weber had said, we can really expand on the story, exaggerate it to get more people interested.
The Lutzes admit to some exaggeration, but insist the fundamental story of their haunting is true.
Okay, so
what's the fundamental part of it? I mean, if it's all the shit's made up.
Who the fuck knows? They lied about everything. Remember, we said we played video where the private investigator, or the paranormal investigators, sorry, and the private investigators actually went and interviewed their neighbors. And the neighbors said, I didn't know they ever moved in.
Yep.
So their story was that they moved in 28 days later, or first it was 10 days, then it was 28 days later. And then their neighbors say, no, they never even bought fucking curtains. We could see right through their windows, and there were a bunch of empty boxes, and we never saw any human beings in the house. So, yeah, whatever their quote unquote fundamentals are, I mean, they have no credibility in this whatsoever, but people still believed them. I mean, that's what is so amazing. There is some level of delusion in believing this with all of this information available. And that's part of why I find this story fascinating. I mean, it's complicated, it's interesting, it has all these moving parts, but at the same time, you see people who just like, well, yeah, okay, but I'm willing to say that they saw something. No, they didn't. They never saw anything. You know, here's okay. Spoiler alert. One day, probably in about 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to talk about another Warren case. It's the Enfield Poltergeist was what it got called. It was the basis of the Conjuring 2 movie. Did you see that one?
I did. I'll have to rewatch it, but yeah, I did watch it.
It's okay. There is just this one element to the story that I feel that the whole story hinges on as to whether or not it's true or not. And that element is that one of the girls who was doing voices of a spirit, who was channeling voices of a spirit, was a trained ventriloquist who later said she made it up.
What the hell?
And people still say, well, she made up that part. The rest of the story is true.
Convenient.
And that's the stuff that just baffles me. Like, I don't get it. I'm like, wait a minute. No. Why are we giving them a second chance to lie to us? They had their opportunity to tell us the truth and they failed. So now none of the story's true. That's just me. Can't speak for anybody else. But when it comes to credibility and you're telling an outlandish story, you got to have your facts down.
Yep.
You know? I've told this story before. I've said it, and I stand by it. Is that I had a situation happen to me recently that was so fucking unbelievable that when I told the story to people, they didn't believe me. So I started lying about it and saying only parts of the story and leaving huge chunks out. And my wife asked me one time, "Why did you do that?" And I was like, "Because they'd think I was lying if I told the real story." And I was like, I would rather have my credibility to this as opposed to them walking away and saying that didn't fucking happen. You know? And that's just me though, but whatever. All right, let's get back to this. So now we're going to talk about the movie. Oh, hold on. All right, Mars has a great. Okay. Did she get okay? That was in the movie. I don't know if that part is true. Because it's been a while since I've researched it. I remember that aspect of it, and when I read it, I was just so fucking blown away. Um, I was so blown away by the story where I was just like, why did these people stay and continue to think this was real when the ventriloquist girl says I made it up? And then I think Corndiff hit it right on the head, which is there is just this deep human instinctual longing to want this to be real. And I think that's, man, I think that sums it up well. All right.
I feel like that's the only thing that could have kept this going this long.
Yeah, exactly. Hack right. I don't know. I'm on the fence. I think a 5th episode may start to convince me. Heck right.
You're starting to turn around.
Yeah. Well, if I haven't convinced you, well, I was going to try to think of something funny. I just didn't. I failed. I just completely fizzled out there. That was dumb. Dylan, did the neighbors see ghosts in the house? We are going to actually get to that, Dylan, within a short amount of time here. But the answer, spoiler alert, is no. No one did. And many people were in the house. Many people visited the house, and some people, their housekeeper was a neighbor. And the neighbor even said, that shit didn't happen. We're going to get some of those people to talk about it in this episode. Like and subscribe, people, please.
Do it now.
And I actually told Corndiff right before we went on the air that I was going to make my avatar try to look like Aaron Imholt and start talking about a goal, but I was going to get on my own nerves. But hey, we've got goals here, people.
That's right.
Let's see, hold on here. Anything the Warrens have been attached to is shady and subject. Space Chief, you are 100% right. And what if I told you that it's even going to get gross? It's going to get really, really gross about what the Warrens were doing that most people don't know about.
Uh-oh.
And yeah, it's something I'm gonna put off talking about because it's just not good. So anyway, oh hey, what we got here? Delta Zero, thank you, Delta Zero. He's down for 5. Technically, actually, there is going to be a 5th episode because when we are done here, I am going to have a members only chat like we did last time, in which I am going to invite all of the audience to ask questions, discuss things. I am not at all going to isolate myself from conflict or discussion. I invite any discussion. I'm not going to try to take it any sort of unprofessional way. I'm going to handle it professional. So I don't mean that to sound like a challenge. But I would love to just hear
Bring it on.
You motherfuckers.
Bring it on.
No, I would actually be very, very willing to hear other perspectives on this. I invite it, please. And hopefully we can schedule it for with enough notice where Corndiff can be there and maybe a 3rd guest who has said he wants to be on this show. Maybe. And let's just say
teaser.
He sounds remarkably like Corndiff. Mm-hmm.
It's not that green puppet, is it?
No. Mars gifted 1 Luigi Greenberg membership. Thank you very much, Mars. Appreciate that, buddy. Mars has been a supporter, and Mars does fantastic AI face swap video, and it's amazing shit. He's done 1,000 of them, but I have my favorite. My favorite is the Godfather one. That one's just fucking amazing. That's great. Let's see here. Fern Dog was gifted a membership. Thank you, Hamhead. Thank you very much for the $2. The ghosts of hams filled that house.
Look at the profile picture. It's a red-eyed pig.
Yes. That was actually one of the generations I made when I was trying to make my card for Jody, the pig.
Yeah.
And I said, hey man, I thought you might like this. And he told me he liked it. So I said, it's all yours, buddy. Hamhead is just great, man. Hamhead is always great. Thank you, Hamhead, for the $2. Chunksta gifted 1 Luigi Greenberg membership. Thank you so much to Chunksta. Let's see who got that. Oh, at a theater near me got it. Hey, he is new to the group and he is all in, and we appreciate it. He has been very cool, been in our chats, and also been very involved. And we like to see that new people. Yes, thank you. Please. And listen to now that you're a member, you can listen to the 1 members only video that I made, and you will also be invited to the members only chat that we're going to have after this, and we need to schedule it. We're thinking maybe Corndiff, if it works for you, maybe next Wednesday, but we'll hammer out those details. Okay, let's see here. Anybody else? Let's see. I don't know. I just thought this was funny. Damn it. I got the hookup on pig AI art. I don't know why that's just funny to say pig AI art. It's just that cracks me up. All right. Okay. So hey, thank you, Chunksta. Thank you. Okay. Here we go. Going back to the story, and now we're going to talk a little bit now about the movie. And I'm going to try to get through this. I really do want to finish this up. We're going to get into a little bit of a weird moment, but we might just skip it. Talk about it later. We'll see.
After the phenomenal success of Jay Anson's novel, which goes through 13 printings and sells more than 10 million copies, the motion picture version of the Amityville Horror is released by American...
Okay, I'm sorry. I know you're not a Stern fan, Corndiff, but this is just a Stern reference, and I have to say it. Ands. All right. We'll have to tell that story later.
American International Pictures on July 27, 1979. Starring James Brolin and Margot Kidder and boasting an eye-catching ad campaign, the film goes on to become one of the biggest blockbusters of the summer, taking in nearly $80 million at the box office. Days before the movie's release, however, attorney William Weber tells the Associated Press that he participated in the creation of the story and that he is now suing George and Kathy Lutz for stealing the ideas he had suggested to them as part of his own never-realized book project in 1976.
Did we hear that, folks? William Weber now says this was my idea. Or at least part of this was my idea. And he is suing the Lutzes for the Lutzes story. So just think about how absurd that is, Corndiff. Let's say you saw ghosts. You saw, ghosts. Ooh, you know what? No, let's make this a little more interesting. Let's say you saw that creepy demon from Children of the Corn. And I tell you, hey, let's sell this story. And you're like, yeah, man, sure, let's do that. Send me over the paperwork. And then you go and make the movie Children of the Corn. And then I come to you and I say, hey, that's my story. And your response is going to be what? Fuck you. You weren't there. This is my story. I'm the one who saw it. I'm the one who did it. But guess what? Me suing you over that is just a giant red flag to the world to say it's all bullshit. We all made it up. I'm entitled to this. And the fact that, well, hold on, let me get through this and I'm going to tell you how this turned out. And it goes to suggest even further how much of a lie this was. Was that a good analogy? Did you like my Children of the Corn analogy? Or was that a terrible analogy? Corndiff? You're muted.
I have been muted.
Were you talking the whole time?
My God, yes. Wow.
Well, it wasn't me this time.
It happens.
All right. Well, did you like my analogy?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
No, I did like
Good.
the analogy. That's what as I was trying to say.
All right, here we go.
When I first met with the Lutzes, we spent literally, I would say, 5 or 6 hours over several bottles of wine that they graciously produced. And that's when talk as to the slime on the doors and the toilets and around windowsills took place. I had suggested certain phenomena could be interpreted as supernatural phenomena. But I knew all along that it was just a commercial venture and it was a fabricated part, and it wasn't true.
Mr. Weber is very inaccurate to say that he provided us with any materials that ended up in the Amityville Horror. The real problem with answering Mr. Weber is that he can pretty much say what he wants, and I don't feel like going back to court to fight him again. It's unfortunate that some people just seem to go a little nuts when all of this came about.
So I just, I love the irony of George Lutz saying, man, these people are freaks. Or, you know, just saying these people are going crazy. I mean, come on. I mean, I have my bullshit, but have you heard their bullshit?
This is the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he shouldn't be the voice of reason.
That's funny. That's just funny shit to me. Okay. So now we're actually going to talk. Let's tie up some loose ends since we are closing up this story now. There is one element of this story that is still in the area of unexplained. The area of maybe. Okay. And that is the priest. Do you remember from the first episode that we did? The Lutzes claimed that they went to or they called a priest to bless their house. A priest showed up and went to this room that was infested with infested with flies. Yeah.
No.
And he was slapped across the face and heard a voice say, "Get out." Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. So that's, I mean, that's proof, right?
Of I was like, wait, what? It got me for a second there. Okay. So what I'm simply saying is that so far, I think every single thing that they have claimed to be supernatural has been proven either a lie or just simply false. But this is just one, I'll just call it a loose end, where we're like, wait a minute, this person wasn't one of the family members, and this guy said this happened. Well, what's his story? Well, guess what? We're going to tie up another loose end. Going to call it 100% average, batting 1,000. Here we go.
In September of 1979, Reverend Ralph J. Pecoraro, the Catholic priest blessed the Amityville house, is ordered to testify in federal court in the $2 million countersuit filed against the Lutzes by attorney William Weber. Father Pecoraro swears under oath that he did, in fact, hear a disembodied voice in the house tell him to get out. But he can neither confirm nor deny that the resulting terrors portrayed in the book or the film ever actually happened.
Okay, so that's interesting. What did we hear the narrator of that History Channel documentary just say?
Fuck, I was muted again. Pecoraro.
Pecoraro.
Yeah.
That's what we heard him say.
Kept laughing at that. I'm 10.
Pecoraro. That is a funny word. That's a funny word to say when you're high. All right. So what we heard him say was that the case between the Weber and the Lutzes goes to court, and that they called Father Pecoraro to the stand, and Pecoraro said, yeah, I got slapped by a ghost. And,
All right. So
and
he was under oath.
hold on.
Okay.
He says he got slapped by a ghost, and then he got told, well, get out. And there was a room full of flies. Okay. Well, that's not what he said in court.
Uh-oh.
I'm saying we as in Greenberg Productions. I don't know how that got said by this narrator of this documentary. Let's see what happened. This is a letter that was actually written by the Diocese of Rockville Center. Okay. There was a documentarian named Rick Osuna, and I actually want to give this guy a lot of praise because I took a lot of this from documentaries he's done, also just information he did, that he's participated in, and from his website. And I want to plug his website. His website is AmityvilleMurders.com. And if this story interests you, he actually has way more information that I've even covered here there on his website, that covers like some really unique parts of the story, the mob ties, the background of the theories on the murders. He's got a lot going on there. He wanted to know the real story about the priest. And in 2002, he reached out to the diocese and said, hey, what's your take on what that priest had to say about the Amityville murders? And guess what happened?
What?
The diocese writes him back, and they say, wow. You know what? We actually have a very definitive opinion about what that lunatic said. And I'm going to read this letter. May 15th, 2002. Dear Mr. Osuna, Bishop Murphy has asked me to respond to your letter of March 22nd. So this was less than 2 months later. At the time in question, Father Ralph Pecoraro worked at the tribunal of the diocese. I always want to see diocese. I don't know why. Diocese of Rockville Center. At the time he worked there. Okay. Father Pecoraro was involved as a counselor of the Lutzes during, as you call it, the quote, Amityville horror story / hoax. Because of his concern over the publicity attached to the story, he petitioned and was granted a leave of absence for personal reasons on May 1st, 1978. At that time, he no longer worked for the diocese. He went to the Diocese of Oakland and worked there. However, he eventually left there and dropped out of sight. He surfaced on occasion, but made no attempt to return and serve within this diocese, even though we encouraged him to do so. Eventually, his whereabouts became unknown to us until hearing of his death in 1987. The diocese maintains that the story was a false report. In November of 1977, diocesan, however you make that an adjective, attorneys prepared a substantial list to be submitted to the publisher of numerous inaccuracies. To be submitted to the publisher, of numerous inaccuracies, factually incorrect references, and untrue statements regarding events, persons, and occurrences that never happened. Enclosed is an article that ran in Newsday on September 12, 1979. I believe it correctly summarizes this situation. Now, here's the thing. I looked for this article, but I couldn't find it. I looked really hard, but the one thing that I did find was actually an article that came out 3 days later on the Washington Post that completely denounces the Amityville Horror as having ever taken place. It was all a hoax, and I believe that those two might have been related. But basically, what we're hearing is the church saying this guy lied. This guy lied about everything. They were willing to actually go to court about it and hire lawyers and say that whatever this guy says is bullshit.
So,
And they also kind of paint a picture that he was maybe a little goofy and, trying to say all the stuff about him moving and going to Oakland and disappearing and being homeless is essentially what it sounds like they're saying, but I'm exaggerating, but still. So there's that.
Again, how have I still been under the impression that this was real all these years?
That is, I mean, that's ultimately the heart of the question
Most
I'm
people
asking.
are in that boat.
Yeah. How did this gain momentum with all of this evidence, all of these people just essentially trying to point fingers and say, it's not right. It's not true. Stop giving it attention.
All that makes sense is that people like a good story more than they care for the truth.
Man, that essentially might be the small and skinny of it. That just might be it, is that people want a good story. People like to be scared. I just think there's just something so incredibly disgusting and immoral by calling something a true story. There was nothing wrong with making the Amityville Horror and just calling it a ghost story. There's nothing wrong with that. But the fact that you're actually, I think it's predatory in a way, and
presenting it as gaining your momentum because you present it as factual.
Exactly.
Is the deception.
And, I'm actually kind of happy to hear that I think like 4 or 5 months ago, the guy who was the focus of the movie The Blind Side. Have you heard about this story?
No.
He is suing the family. The kid that they adopted in real life. Okay, so there's I'm blanking on the names, but the
one where
characters-
Sandra Bullock adopted a black kid, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So now in real life, the black kid is suing Sandra Bullock's family. Like the people that they portrayed in the movies.
Wow.
Because they stole money from him. And also because they published this book that he claims nothing in it was true. That none of it happened. And what was really interesting was I'm in my brain, as soon as someone tells me something is a true story, I immediately discount it as being false. And I want to go look up the facts of something. Yeah. And I do that with all movies. Whenever they call it a true story, I try to look it up. I don't know. It's just this weird little habit I have. But I remember when
you're a skeptic.
Yeah, because I'm a skeptic. Yeah. And because every movie has some part of it that's unbelievable. And you're like, that didn't really fucking happen. Yeah. So yeah, when The Blind Side came out, I remember immediately going to the internet and trying to find this. And I remember having no trouble at all finding so many people who are like, who denounced the movie saying, this is not a true story. This is not how this happened. That kid didn't find football because he had white parents. He was already an all-star in football. And he wasn't even homeless. Apparently he just had a bad home situation. And, they just exaggerate and embellish. And somehow the story just winds up being a completely different story altogether. And I don't know. And that it bothers me. That shit bothers me. And it's really kind of funny because I remember one time I caught my wife watching it. I was like, this whole movie's bullshit. And my wife got mad at me saying, I just want to watch it. I know this probably isn't real, but just let me think it is. And I'm like,
can you suspend reality for one fucking minute?
Exactly. But that's the thing is like, exactly what she's asking for is what I don't want. You know,
Right.
I was like, I don't want to suspend reality. I want to know the real story. You know, and but I think that goes to what you're saying is people just want a good story. So anyway, all right, let's go back to this. Like and subscribe. Number up, people.
Turn on notifications.
Turn on notifications. I forget that one all the time.
Or I'll clip off your toes while you sleep.
Ah, shit! I forgot I did this one. Okay, folks. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna. I don't think I'm gonna miss anything. So, in 1999, Madison Scott. Wait, was that his first name? I forget. Marvin Scott.
Oh,
Marvin Scott was the reporter who led the news team in 1977 that spent the night in the house with the Warrens, with Laura DiDio, when they found the boy.
Yeah.
And in 1999, Marvin Scott decides to have this retrospective. And I wrote down a little summary about it. Yeah, okay. Live retrospective news segment on the story to review it again and talk about it and see who is still alive and if their opinions have changed. Now, at this point, everyone's still alive. And he actually, it's really funny. He's very, what did we call it? We just call it contrarian, in which he was in the room where all of these psychics and spiritualists were all saying that they were experiencing all of this crazy paranormal phenomenon. And at the end of it, he says, I didn't see shit. He completely is contradictory to everything they're saying. He's like, that didn't happen. I didn't see that. I mean, I love this guy because I think a contrarian has more credibility than a group of people who are all going along with the same story. If this guy is saying, you know, look, whatever you saw, I didn't see it. This is what happened to me. This is my story, and I didn't see anything, and I think ghosts are dumb. And what better person to host a retrospective and interview people? So I did actually record this at a little bit of a higher speed, but I'm probably going to skip through chunks of it just for the sake of time. But if for any reason people want to watch more of this than I'm allowing, then just let me know and I'll slow down.
To love a good ghost story, demonic tales of horror and the supernatural. It has held their fascination from time immemorial. Consider, if you will, the most recent box office success, the thriller, The Blair Witch Project. The precursor of that film was another horror tale that scared the daylights out of another generation. Later, I will be joined by noted parapsychologist Dr. Hans Holzer, who will provide some insight into the psychic phenomenon. Most people think the Amityville Horror is a good...
Real quick, we remember who that is, right?
Yes.
Softcore porn.
Scary ghost story.
Heather.
What is not commonly known is that the film is based partially on fact. The murder of an entire family in that house 25 years ago today.
He fired 7 shots from a high-powered rifle.
Ronald DeFeo was demonically influenced in committing that horrible crime.
They were shots that left 6 members of one family dead.
I hate Lorraine Warren. When she talks, we talked about this on episode 2. I just want to play a fart sound over her voice. Like when she talks, I just want to hear, like she takes a deep inhale and we hear just while her mouth is moving.
That'd be a good one.
I don't like either of those two charlatans.
In this charming Dutch colonial home, unceremoniously put a town on the map and spawned a cottage industry for one of the most lucrative ghost stories of all time. It didn't take long for police to determine that 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo had murdered his mother and father, 2 brothers and 2 sisters as they slept.
The closest one he ever explained as to why he did it, because at that time he felt that they were conspiring against him.
Some suggested DeFeo was after his father's $200,000 insurance policy, but followers of the occult believe something much more sinister was behind his murderous rampage.
Ron was into some very dark things. He was into some occult practices.
Ronnie DeFeo said that there was a black, dark mass or shadow alongside of him, which was obsessing his...
racist.
Thoughts and telling him to
I don't
kill
want to
everybody.
forget at some point they're mentioning in the chat Robert the Doll. Might
Yeah,
be
actually,
a good one.
Yeah, I just commented that might be a good topic. What's interesting though is I do actually know a little bit about Robert the Doll, and there's just not a lot of info on it prior to, or I'm sorry,
I've
it's very
seen it.
similar. It's very
I've
similar
seen it
to
face to face.
Oh, you have? Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
oh, well, then we'll have to remember that.
It's
But it's
a
very similar to
yeah.
Annabelle in that whenever they talk about its quote unquote victims, they never give last names or dates or anything like that. So
Yeah.
that's weird shit. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's in Florida, right?
No, Zach Baggins Museum in Vegas.
Oh, interesting. Ugh, that's another one. You know what? That's actually probably a topic we should talk about. That asshole.
Yeah.
But you know,
He's
I gotta
full of
admit, he is so full of shit. But I gotta admit, knowing what I know about skepticism, if someone said, "I'll give you millions of dollars to say there's ghosts," I gotta admit, I'd think about it.
Yeah.
I would. Ghosts, we love them, folks, don't we?
Love them. It's a way of
love 'em.
life.
I'd have to consider it. I'd have to consider it, and I feel like that makes me a better person that I'm honest about it.
That's right.
No, he was insane. Rejecting that defense, a jury found DeFeo guilty and ordered him to serve 6 25 years.
I'm sorry. That was just a real funny moment. They had such a buildup of ghosts and spirits and black cloaked figures and blah blah blah. Click over to Will Weber. Goes, no, he's crazy.
Years to life sentences. Now at the Greenhaven Correctional Facility upstate, DeFeo was recently denied a request for parole. Despite earlier confessions, DeFeo's stories have wavered over the years, accusing others, including the mob, of committing the murders while he was smoking marijuana in the basement. In recent correspondence with me, he again suggested it was his sister Allison who killed everyone, and that he killed her in self-defense while wrestling for the gun. DeFeo writes, "Really, I need to find a real criminal lawyer, get the DNA testing done, and I am out the door, because the truth speaks for itself."
Oh yeah. Okay, I totally forgot about this aspect of the story, which we've briefly talked about, but I've skipped over it just for the sake of time. Ronald DeFeo wrote a lot of letters from prison, and it only took him 6 months to really love being gay. And he
Oh,
wrote
yeah.
letters. He wrote letters talking about how much fun it was.
Wow. They turned him out.
I mean, I'd like to think it'd take me longer than 6 months. Jeez. It really just sounds like he was
Sounds like
kinda
it was going to
waiting.
happen no matter what.
Yes.
Out of the brutal murders in this house, one of the biggest mysteries still lingering 25 years later is why none of the family members was awakened by the explosive burst of gunfire throughout the house. The Lutzes claim the house was haunted by evil spirits. Religious demonologist Ed Warren and his clairvoyant wife Lorraine, who operate a museum of the occult in Connecticut, came in to investigate.
This is something else we're eventually going to have to talk about, is their quote unquote occult museum. Let's just look at this picture.
Can people take tours of it, or could they?
They used to. It's since been closed, but I have seen pictures of it and seen all kinds of stuff, and every opinion I've heard about it is that to call it a museum was a far better compliment than it deserved. It was just a basement with a door, and they had this nonsense bullshit. Let me look at this. That is a statue of a witch.
I mean, well, maybe okay. Devil's advocate here. Maybe maybe that witch's hat was used in some kind of like actual witch shit,
and it needed a display. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm willing to buy that for the sake of this.
I think I see a haunted cuckoo clock.
Yeah. Okay. Something I did want to kind of talk about in this episode, or maybe we'll do it on the members only one, are the all of the sequel Amityville Horror movies that have spawned since the original, because even though we're talking about, 1979, people being so ridiculous to accept this story and making the movie and believing it, there were so many sequels that came out. Sequels still come out to this day, and there is an Amityville in Space movie. Look it up.
Oh my God, really?
And to call it a movie might be a stretch. It looks like it was just filmed on an iPhone, but it's ridiculous. And but still, they're using the name because that name has some kind of notoriety. But
right.
Anyway, but yeah, this museum is so dumb. And I actually do have some video where the jury's out of some of the items that they had here on display. The jury's out on whether the Lutzes were lying or whether they were duped. And I feel like that's an interesting conversation to have, because some of the things they had were fraudulent hoaxes before they even came into their possession. So that's going to be an interesting topic when we get there.
Okay.
There is no doubt in our mind that...
Oh, fuck. Yes. Space Chief. That's exactly where I was going. I'm sorry. You, man, thank you for bringing me back on track. I got distracted there. That's where I was going, was that Amityville Part 2 is based on a lamp that came from the Amityville house.
Oh, come on.
Not kidding. Amityville 2 with Burt Ward from Rocky. He is the main character of the movie. And was it Ward? That was his name, right? Burt Ward? No, I'm thinking of Batman. What was his name? Anyway. Yes,
Michael Keaton.
Burt from Paulie from Rocky. I remember his name was Burt in real life, but I can't remember his last name. But anyway, so yes, I haunted. And it turns out the movie was very unfunny. All right. That's exactly where I was going, Space Chief. Thank you for bringing me back to
something of a demonic nature.
Oh, and Amityville 3 is actually going to pop up here in just a little bit, because there is a funny little tidbit about Amityville 3 that I think Corndiff is going to like.
Sure haunts at that home.
We could sit here for 3 weeks, and I'll keep telling you each time it's a fraud.
Bill Weber was a trial lawyer for Ronald DeFeo, who was found guilty of killing his family in that house a year earlier.
The Lutzes took advantage of a unfortunate incident and built a supernatural story around it, but it's not true.
In letters to me from prison, DeFeo says it was he who was taken advantage of. Declares also that the Amityville Horror is a hoax.
He also said, "You ever had gay sex? It's awesome."
That it's all about money and industry. The convicted killer sent me documents purportedly showing that his lawyer was after lucrative book and movie deals, and accuses him of starting what has become one of the greatest ghost stories of all time.
I didn't start it, that's for sure.
You contributed to it.
I contributed, absolutely.
After the Lutzes fled the house, Weber says he met with them to discuss a book idea about the DeFeo murders, not a ghost story.
We sat down and we talked. We had a nice evening conversation.
So this story evolved over dinner with the Lutzes and a bottle of wine.
I think it was about 3 bottles of wine, yes. Yes, about 3 bottles of wine.
So the story grew with each bottle of wine?
Each bottle.
Okay, so I'm going to actually fast forward this.
A lot of wine.
This is a lot of nonsense. It just recovers the story. But I do, and he interviews Hans Holzer, and Hans Holzer sticks by his theory about the Indian chief. But it's really, you could find this if anybody wants a link. I'll send you a link to this. Let's see here. This was actually the Amityville Historical Society was asked about the grave. This was their response: "It's total nonsense. There was no cemetery or sacred ground there. It's a shame to prolong and keep this myth going." God bless you, sir. That's it's the whole point of this show. It's only for monetary gain. Anyone who believes it is a victim. It's a shameful intrusion upon reason and totally devoid of any foundation in fact. I love this person. This is a great person.
Doesn't leave any room for interpretation. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. So I do want to actually talk a little bit real quick. I don't have video for this, so I have to kind of narrate it because these people won't talk about this on camera. But I want to talk a little bit about the court case. of Lutz versus Weber. I'm going to try to get through this. Bu- 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 bu. Oh, and also a little bit of a follow-up on Father Pecoraro. So Lutz versus Weber. I'm going to read this, and so I'm going to I'm just going to push through. And so this is from AmityvilleMurders.com. Rick Osuna, the website I just gave out a little bit ago, but this is the only real description I could find of the court case of Lutz versus Weber. And here we go. Amityville Horror franchise had its early beginnings in 1976. Oh, wait, I can do that. The Lutz terminated their proposed venture with Weber because they felt they wanted to he wanted to tie them up with an unfavorable contract. Instead, the Lutzes chose to go with author Jay Anson. The contract they eventually signed with Anson offered a more lucrative split of 50%. Nevertheless, this did not stop Hoffman from selling 2 articles about the Lutz's experience. Hoffman was the name of the other author who sold the first article to Good Housekeeping that we talked about earlier. The first article, here we go. First article appeared in an issue of New York Sunday News titled Life in a Haunted House. The second was titled Our Dream House Was Haunted and appeared in 1977 edition of Good Housekeeping. Both articles were nearly identical and were based on the experiences that the Lutzes, Weber, and Hoffman brainstormed in January 1976. In May 1977, George and Kathy Lutz filed suit against Paul Hoffman, William Weber, Good Housekeeping, blah, 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 and the Hearst Corporation. Those were the owners. In the suit, the Lutz's alleged invasion of privacy, misappropriation of name for trade purposes, and negligent infliction of mental distress, and they sought relief in the form of $4.5 million. Let's see. In turn, Hoffman, Weber, and Burton each placed a counterclaim against the Lutzes for $2 million, citing they had perpetuated a fraud and breached a contract. Judge Jacob Mishler dismissed the claims against Good Housekeeping, New York Sunday News. You hear that? They dismissed the claims against them because there were no invasion of privacy issues and because the plaintiffs had failed to state a claim upon which relief could be granted to them. All that sounds like is bad lawyering. Basically says, no, you don't even qualify for this. Why'd you bring them in here? And then you didn't even follow up by saying what you're entitled to receive if you win. You have to lay all that shit out. Judge Mishler, however, eventually handed the case over to a different judge, Jack B. Weinstein. When the actual trial began, Weinstein, known to be a no-nonsense judge, presided over the case in Brooklyn's district court. And on September 10th, 1979, Judge Weinstein dismissed the rest of the Lutz's suit and allowed the defendant's counterclaim to continue. So basically, the Lutzes sued Weber. The first judge says, I'm not interested, gives it to another judge. This judge says, Lutzes, you're out. Weber, you can sue the Lutzes. Total backfire.
Turn of events.
He said, quote, based on what I have heard, it appears to me that to a large extent, the book is a work of fiction. Relying, again, this is 1979. And here we are today with people still believing this, relying in a large part upon the suggestions of Mr. Weber. In the September 17th, 1979 issue of People magazine, Weber reasoned, I know this book is a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine. I don't know why he kept emphasizing the wine. I don't know what purpose that had to do with it.
An excuse, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Whatever. But they're still doing it today. They're still drunk. Judge Weinstein also pointed out that he saw serious ethical questions regarding Weber and Burton's conduct. Therefore, he proposed to refer the entire matter to the New York State Bar Association. Judge Weinstein said there is a very serious ethical question when lawyers become literary agents. The next day, the counterclaim was conveniently settled and the entire case was dismissed. So, what we have there is that the case went nowhere. You could say in these documentaries, sure, the Lutzes sued Weber, and then Weber sued the Lutzes, but that's all you can say. And the reason you can't really give any finality to the issue is because this judge just said, basically, if you win, it shows that you're a dishonest son of a bitch, and your profession as a lawyer is going to hear about this. So go ahead and proceed if you want, if it's worth it to you. And he said, nah, I'm good. Thanks.
Didn't want to shoot himself in the foot.
Exactly. It's kind of like a football penalty that you get to decline. You want to take your penalty or you want to move forward? What do you want to do, shithead? And he's like, I'm good. And then a little bit of a follow-up on Pecoraro. Let's see here. There are discrepancies between what was written in Anson's book about Pecoraro and what Lutz described in the civil case against Weber. Anson's book said that Father Pecoraro had met George Lutz 2 years earlier and that he had helped Kathy and George in the days before they were married. George Lutz stated in court, state whether or not you know the Reverend Ralph Pecoraro. If so, state the date, time, and place you first met him. Over objections, George Lutz answered on or about July 14th, 1975. And he gives an address. Kathy's response was the same. And I spoke to him on the telephone. After reading the Lutz's answers, it becomes evidence that Father Pecoraro did not know the Lutzes for any appreciable amount of time prior to their arrival in Amityville. It should also be noted that the Lutzes were married on July 4th, 1975, so Pecoraro could not have offered guidance to Lutzes before they were married, as they claimed. So there's just more lies. Just more and more and more lies. It goes on to talk about something we already said, which is basically he denied any of the so-called supernatural afflictions that Anson claimed the priest had suffered. He also said, told Judge Weinstein that he was not sure if there were any supernatural occurrences at the house. Let's see. He did, in fact, hear someone say, "Get out." But the priest's description was vague at best. So it says a number of explanations could exist. He is now deceased, but it remains unclear if he was a willing participant in the hoax or an uninformed bystander. So there we go. There's that. Following up that loose end. And I know it's a lot of information, folks. I just want to end this. I want to move on. I'm cramming a lot of shit in this episode. I want to move on to something else. I don't want to do
a lot, but it's all still relevant. And how much bullshit this story is.
Yeah. And okay, so now let's talk a little bit about, is it next? Hold on. Okay. So next thing we're going to talk about are the kids. We did talk a little bit about this. In 2012, fast forwarding the story a little bit, Kathy Lutz's son, George's stepson, Danny Lutz, tries to capitalize on this story by selling his version of events for a documentary in 2012 called My Amityville Horror. And I'm just going to fast forward through Holzer. Indian.
The shitty font they use.
Yeah, no kidding. Ectoplasm, Indian chief,
and the horse.
That's that's the picture there. And he claims
Being very angry with a male voice, and we have that on tape, by the way. And
This photograph looks like there was a little.
Did he just say male horse?
He did.
It's that. Oh, see, now that's funny. I'd be playing that right there if he like points to a dick and he's like, obviously a male horse.
Movement and a
Yeah, but
shadow.
there wasn't. This is the funny part. There is some whitish thing around me for which there's no explanation. Look at the
Luminescence off.
No explanation. I made it up. All right, here we go.
I believe that there is a such thing as evil, and I was a victim of that.
On November 13th, 1974, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, became the site of a notorious mass murder.
I didn't want to be the Amityville horror kid. I've been running away from it, and it finally caught up to me.
Very shortly after moving in, the Lutz family claimed to have begun experiencing mounting paranormal phenomena.
When I went in there, there was probably 400 or 500 flies. And we're talking, this is mid-December in Long Island. The entire family is standing there watching the garage door slam up and slam down, and the dog is hanging himself. I had...
You remember that? Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. Suicidal.
The dog tied a noose with his little thumbless paws and was so self-aware and depressed that he tried to hang himself. This is what passes for supernatural phenomena. My dog suddenly grew a human brain and decided he didn't want to live anymore.
I had to speak to George in sir.
But at that point, he was your stepfather.
You don't want to call him Dad? You're not my father.
He lived with adults who believed in the occult.
You married this guy, you moved me to his house. What the hell is he into?
They got very deep with something dark and something evil that they totally didn't understand.
Satanic history, devil worship, mind control.
Hey, by the way, that right there was the Warren Museum. That hallway that we just saw.
Yeah.
Damn it. Yeah, there you go. That's the Warren, quote unquote, basement museum.
Worship, mind control. I was possessed by a spirit that I could not get rid of on my own. I didn't care if the priests were beating me, performing exorcisms on me, which, if I'm not mistaken, they don't want to talk about.
When the story started...
Why was there a corn husk around the crucifix? Did you see that? That was weird. Any response?
You're asking too many questions.
To change, then it's time to become suspicious.
The sensation felt by Steve Petropoulos, our cameraman. He was overcome by something.
This is one of the pictures that their photographer took that night. There were no children and no animals in the house that night.
We remember bits and pieces of experience, but we'll fill in the gaps in our memory.
Maybe this is just manifestations. Maybe you imagined all of this.
I just wanted somebody to believe me.
If this was my trailer, that would have been followed up with, maybe you're full of shit. Maybe you're just lying.
Show me the evidence.
What took place in that house was a true personification of evil.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone here saw that movie. It is a hunk of shit. Let's, again, we're just tying up loose ends here. Let's tie up this loose end. Now, did you see there was actually a guy, they showed him in that trailer named Joel Martin.
Which one was he?
They showed him sitting on a couch in a room, had kind of 70s style Anton Chigurh hair.
Okay, yeah.
that was the defining characteristic you needed.
Yeah.
So that guy who was in that trailer, who they just used his words in some weird context to look like he was trying to defend Danny Lutz, that guy has something to say about this movie.
In 2012, Danny Lutz, one of the Lutz's children, came forward with his own account of what supposedly happened in the house. And he's now claiming that the entire haunting really did happen and that many of the events that was in the original Amityville Horror are absolutely true. However, one of the things that he must forget is that during the 1980s, he actually approached a couple of people trying to sell them a story on how George Lutz had fabricated the whole account.
Ball secretary said, "You have a call from a Danny Lutz." I said, "It's funny, Lutz? Lutz?" wait. And I, hello? And he said, "Yeah, I'm George Lutz's, I guess he said stepson, and or son." And I said, "How can I help you?" He said, "Listen, I can tell you the truth about the Amityville Horror story. I can tell you things about how the story came about. I can tell you things we went through." And I said, "Well, does it mean it's true or it's not true?" He said, "Well, first I gotta, work out some arrangement whereby, I can sell you the story." Danny wanted to make money, understandably, on the story. And we spoke for a while, and he said, I have a story I'd like to sell. I said, well, news people don't we don't usually buy stories, frankly. I'd be happy to hear your story, and whatever the truth is, or whatever your version is, that's fine. But as far as us paying for a story, the problem with that is it sets a terrible precedent. I said, all right, let me take your number down, and if there's some way that we can work something out, or something can be accomplished or accommodated for you, I'll get back to you. And that's the way it was left. One individual I know he called was Steve Kaplan, and
Who was Steve Kaplan?
That guy.
Yes, you are correct. He was also in a lookalike contest for L. Ron Hubbard. I'm joking. No, Stephen Kaplan was the vampire hunter.
That's my next guess.
As a parapsychologist, as a psychic investigator, Steve obviously was interested in what Danny had to say, but Steve was in no position to pay him, and if he was, he wouldn't have. If Steve was sitting on $1 million at that moment, he would not have given him the money. He did not believe what Danny had to say, and I think Steve realized very quickly, as most of us did, if we pay him, he'll say pretty much frankly what we'd like to hear. You know, he may deny that now, but that's generally the way it works. Reaching out to Steve Kaplan suggests that you think something is or might be a fraud.
As part and parcel of Danny Lutz's new account of what happened at 112 Ocean Avenue, he claims that the haunting was actually precipitated by his mother, Kathy, and his stepfather, George Lutz, because they were into some rather dark things and were allegedly practicing transcendental meditation at the house, and thus that brought about the haunting. If that is true, it does nothing but validate the statements made by Stephen Kaplan, wherein he asserted that George Lutz had a rather deep knowledge of the occult before they ever purchased the house at 112 Ocean Avenue.
Deep knowledge.
Deep knowledge. So, what we are hearing now is that guy who was in the Amityville Haunting trailer is actually saying that Danny Lutz, even though he made this documentary saying that everything was true, that there was a haunting, he was actually trying to sell both sides of the story to whoever would buy it. He was going to the skeptic to sell a skeptic story, and then also going to the believers to sell a believer story.
It's like he was just trying to make money.
That's what everyone in the story is doing. And hey, let me ask you, where do you lean? You think this happened? I don't know, man. It's really funny. Again, I want to invite anyone who has a differing opinion to talk to me. Tell me if you still believe that any of this happened after all of this evidence and after all of these stories.
I don't, but I still want to rewatch the Ryan Reynolds version.
Oh, that one's terrible. It's so bad.
The best one.
You know what's funny is they really lean on the red room. Remember the red room thing? But in that one, it wasn't just a place to hide a box, like in reality. I think they said like there was some pilgrim who was torturing Indians there. So I forget. I'm not even kidding. No horse. I really think that is how the story was.
So that would mean it would have been the pilgrim shitting in the toilets.
Yes, the pilgrim. I'm not kidding. Like he had like a buckle hat, and it was like really like a pilgrim. Okay, so we are closing up here now, and I'm going to just have a couple of last things. I think we've tied up every loose end. And that's something I'm going to throw out to the audience, that if there is a loose end that I have not tied up, please also let me know.
Hamhead has a good question. I think maybe it's a question. Can you confirm this? I believe Ronnie D really loved Dick before he died. Is that true?
You know, my sources on that say yes.
Okay. Right.
But I think my sources also said that he was more curious about it once he was surrounded by it. It's like going to a buffet for the first time. So we only have a couple of things here to cover, and then we're gonna have some final thoughts and a little bit of a preview for where we're gonna be going. Heyo.
George Lutz had proclaimed through the years that he wished that the whole Amityville Horror was a hoax and that it never happened. And at one point, he appeared on one of the news magazines actually crying and professing how this whole thing had changed his life and not for the better. But when George died in 2006, if you look at his probate papers, what is very interesting is that he was actually a 94% owner in an enterprise called Amityville Horror Enterprises, LLC. And Amityville Horror Enterprises, LLC literally had its hand in almost every book and sequel written on the Amityville case. So that hardly seems like an endeavor undertaken by somebody who would like to forget that this horrific experience happened.
Did you catch that?
One company it's been doing everything.
No, it was several companies. He was saying, "I wish this never happened. Whatever you want to fucking say. I wish this never happened." And his probate records show that he had multiple business entities, each of which profiting on the perpetuation of the Amityville Horror story with the sequels. He was profiting off of the sequels that were unassociated with the original story whatsoever. That Lamp movie, he made money from that Lamp movie.
Oh, that's this is a good line of work to get into, it seems.
Believe me, I've thought about this. I've thought about starting my own church, my own cult.
You should start a haunted church.
Yes, I just need a consultant to let me know how to get the right infrastructure so that I can take it over and build it.
Furthermore, it must be noted that stepsons Danny and Chris were cut from the will and excluded from any of the profits realized as a result of the Amityville Horror.
Wah, wah, wah. Why was Danny Lutz selling a story to anyone that would buy it? Because he didn't make any money off of the original story because stepdad George Lutz cut him out of the will.
So he's just trying to get his piece.
Yeah. So there you have it, folks.
Franchise. So in my mind, the stories, and in my opinion, the stories being told by Danny and Chris Lutz today is simply their attempt to capitalize off of a story that put a lot of money in their former stepfather and mother's pockets.
And that is all of the loose ends that we are going to talk about. But I wanted to include this next little thing that I just am going to call final thoughts. It's our Jerry Springer send off of some people who have something to say. And these are all people who were personally involved. This is the thing I alluded to earlier when I forget who it was asked about what the neighbors had to say about the house. So enjoy.
Those who fought to prove the Amityville Horror a hoax still insist that there are no ghosts at 112 Ocean Avenue and never were.
Today, if anyone asked me if the former DeFeo residence on Ocean Avenue was haunted, I would simply say, why don't you wait until I write a book and you could buy it to find out. But I would be saying that facetiously, because the house has never been haunted. It isn't haunted today. And the Lutzes, they have my congratulations. They made a very successful commercial venture, and they pulled the wool over the public's eyes.
In general...
And that's your co-conspirator saying that.
Yeah.
That's like, fuck. I'm trying to think of somebody in the news. I can't think of anybody. Who are some famous people in the news who work together? But who did he work? I mean, but who was somebody that was helping Diddy?
Beyonce.
Okay, so that's like Beyonce telling Diddy, "Hey, good job, shithead. You made money, and I didn't. Fuck you." J-Lo, isn't J-Lo in on it? She was Diddy?
Maybe that was who it was.
I don't know.
Well, I believe that there could be some kind of residual feeling left over in the house where a terrible murder had been committed. In this particular house, I couldn't tell you. It has just as much of a chance of having strange phenomena as any other house. But because of all the lies that were told and all the deceptions, we'll never know.
So there was a little article in the newspaper, then it got bigger, then it got bigger, it got bigger.
I don't know where these people, came up with this idea that this house, I would tell people my children slept there. They never said anything was weird about it.
The fact is that my wife, who cleaned the house, never, ever, ever saw anything other than a beautiful colonial 3-story house.
They had to come from a violent, brutal family with the father. Maybe the mother wasn't able to protect them. She was probably abused too. So, in a way, it makes sense that out of that kind of abuse can come a certain amount of violence.
It was just something that them people dreamed up.
My personal feelings that it was complete lie. I was in the basement. I was everywhere in that house.
I got the book on a lark just to see what it was like, and I thought it was very funny.
It was phony from the beginning. I didn't know Weber's connection with it yet. That didn't come out till later.
It all sounds phony to me.
My wife said she went to see the movie, and I didn't yell at her, but I yelled. I said, "What are you going to see that junk for?" I said, "It's just a bunch of bull."
Just to sleep.
You going to the movies, shithead?
So, was that one guy sitting in front of an Easter egg basket?
I don't know, but I thought that guy just made me think of Popeye. Just thinking of Popeye. Hey, you going to the movies to see that bullshit? Wait, that's Popeye, right?
It is.
Am I doing a Popeye?
Over, we'd sleep either in the basement, we'd sleep in Mark's room, and there was nothing odd about the house.
As far as all this ghoulish stuff, that's all people to make money, and I'm not into that.
I think that's sort of what makes sense to me about what happened. Now you add the...
Oh, did you see who this was? In the titles, it was pretty low resolution.
She played one of the people in the movie.
In part 2, in the lamp one. The lamp.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't recognize it.
Mysterious element, which Albert Einstein even said, it's more powerful than anything logical.
I just couldn't believe that they never questioned or looked for people who knew them and got their feeling of how they were. It was just strange.
My wife and I, first of all, refused to watch any of that garbage, believe in any of that garbage, or have anything to do with that garbage.
The circulation of that book was tremendous. I don't know how Prentice Hall must have made a hell of a lot of money on that.
I believe this was a commercial venture for the Lutzes. They thought that they were going to make money, and they really couldn't afford to buy that house.
I wouldn't read the book. I didn't read the book until maybe 7 years ago. I just said, I have to read this and see what this is all about. But it just seemed like someone dreamt this up.
For me personally, I think it was more out of the psychological violence and the abuse that this family got killed. But it makes for good film to have the other added in, because everybody loves a good horror story.
The fact that these people that moved in saw pigs with blood coming out of their eyes looking in the window, something like that. That's here we are today. How many years ago is it?
bunch of fucking jagoffs. that guy's accent cracks me up.
The Amityville Horror, a true story by Jay Anson, despite its inaccuracies, went on to sell 10 million copies and spawned a dozen more books and 9 movie sequels, making it one of the most successful haunted house franchises in the history of filmmaking, in excess of $400 million at the box office. As for Butch DeFeo and William Weber, they never received a dime from the horror story they helped perpetuate.
Wow.
There you have it. That is the Amityville Horror. But I do want to just actually throw in a couple of little epilogues that I think are kind of funny. I don't think I kept it in here. Did I? Yes, I did actually. Okay, here we go. All right. So there was now this is actually just for you, Corndiff, just because I think you're going to appreciate this. There was Amityville 2, and then there was Amityville 3D. Okay. Amityville 3D came out in 1983. So we're going to actually have a little bit of a brief catch up with Steve Kaplan, the vampire hunter, at a theater near me. You know, I don't know why. I can't tell you why it took me this long to realize how fucking loud it is, and I do apologize. I'm gonna make sure that it's a little quieter for ongoing episodes. Oh, here we go.
It's attention grabbing.
Yeah, that's what that's what I'm trying to do. I imagine someone's falling asleep out there. If I was a teacher, this is what I would do. Hamhead, $2. Thank you so much for the $2. All involved are awful people. That's the point. And I said it on episode 1. But I just don't think the point came across until episode 4. How awful these people were. Every single one. I described it as Game of Thrones of con men. Everyone trying to get a tiny piece of this tragedy to make a little bit of money. And out of all of this shit come 2. I'm going to say we've probably gone through what we like 24 people involved, and excuse me, only 2 have proven to have any credibility whatsoever, and while one of them is kind of borderline, but yeah, it's amazing, and I don't know why this story is not more well known. I don't know why, but that's kind of a meta question of asking why it's not more well known, because we've talked about how people just want a good scary story, and even if this story was broadcast on national news, people are still going to believe that it was real, and they're still going to want to believe that it's real. And oh man, it's just nonsense. It's just a bunch of fucking nonsense. So thank you, Hamhead, $2. Yes, everyone involved, but it took 10 hours of us talking to convey how awful they are. Amityville 2, Electric Boogaloo. Not a joke. I actually made an Electric Boogaloo reference last night, and someone had no idea what I was talking about. So I want to make sure I acknowledge this, because that's what I would have wanted. And that person who didn't know it was my wife. So yes. So here we go. Just real quick. These are just going to be a little bit of epilogues to what's going on. Stephen Kaplan actually passes away in 1995. So the world has now been overrun by vampires now that he's gone. Just weeks before, his book is released that contained all of his research exposing the Lutz's story as a hoax. It was called the Amityville Conspiracy. And while he maintained a reputation as being a voice of reason throughout the story and trying to expose those who tried to capitalize on this horrific story, he might have also thrown his hat into the ring of those awful people who tried to capitalize. In 1983, there is a sequel to the Amityville Horror movie, and it is released. It is called Amityville 3D, and it is marketed as based on the findings of Stephen Kaplan.
Have you seen it?
I saw it as a kid because it was one of the it was a PG-13 movie, and I remember it came on HBO during the day, and I remember there was this one particular scene that was like it scared me, but also at the same time I didn't take it too seriously, because it was just goofy and it was so low budget that it was like, trying to think of a good example. I can't think of one, but it was that cheesy type of horror that even I think I was 4 or 5 years old. I remember seeing it and it like giving me a jump scare, but not a I can't sleep at night scare, if that makes sense. So I just want to read this real quick. Due to a lawsuit between the Lutz family and Dino De Laurentiis, and if people don't know who that is, that was a famous movie mogul, over the storyline, which did not involve the Lutz family. So they sued because it didn't involve them. You feel me?
Yeah.
Amityville 3D was not initially promoted as a sequel, and the name Lutz is never used in the film. However, the film does make a reference to the original Amityville Horror story. The character of John Baxter, played by a guy, I forget his first name, last name is Roberts, is loosely based on Stephen Kaplan, who was trying to prove the Lutz's story was a hoax at the time it was panned upon release. Now, I don't know if that means that Stephen Kaplan got a paycheck for this, so that's why I kept it vague and saying he might have. I don't know. It seems weird, but whatever. But now I want to just also read this, in which we have said that the movie was marketed as being based on the findings of Stephen Kaplan, but this is the plot of the movie. Inquisitive Reveal magazine journalist John Baxter moves into the Amityville house in defiance of the supernatural events connected to it and finds everyone around him besieged by evil manifestations connected to a demonic presence.
Okay.
Based on the findings of the skeptic Stephen Kaplan.
Wow.
And that just makes no sense, but it's hilarious. And
I've never seen that, and I've got to watch that.
Oh, it's bad. I mean, it's so bad. It's Meg Ryan, a young, very adorable Meg Ryan is in it.
Wow.
And let's see here. So to be clear, Kaplan is not credited in the movie, so he very well might not have received anything. But I just wanted to be known that this movie was very open to suggest that Kaplan was the inspiration for this character, for this journalist character, yet the story was completely fictionalized. So everyone was trying to get their name attached to this story. And now finally, we're going to talk briefly about where we're going. And I've already said it, so I ain't going to say much more. So we're going to move on to the Warrens. And Annabelle is going to be the first thing that we're going to talk about next week. And as a brief little teaser, let's see what Stephen Kaplan's wife, Roxanne Kaplan, oh, fuck me, hold on. Let's see what she has to say and what her opinion is of the Warrens, because this is going to be the theme of all of our shows about the Warrens. It's 29 seconds, and then we will say our goodbyes. I muted it for you.
Ed and Lorraine Warren, I think, are the biggest phonies and the most dangerous people around because they are the type of individuals that scare people out of their homes. I believe the Warrens are taking advantage of the public. They make their living from this field. Unlike Stephen, he made his living from teaching.
Sorry, I tried to catch that last one because it was the film roll. But that's going to be the last one, folks. There you have it. They are phonies, and they are trying to scare people for profit because There's money in it.
Did they?
People will pay.
No, I want to believe that they helped people, though.
Yeah, I want to believe that too.
It's just probably not going to work out that way, is it?
No. And I think we're going to see very quickly they knew what they were doing, and this was what they wound up doing was calculated, and it was a goal, and they wanted to get there. And it's so funny. I'm so tempted just to go right into it, but I know we all have lives and we all want to do shit. But hey, if you want to hear me tell the whole Annabelle story, stick around. I'll stay right here. I'm joking. What's funny is Annabelle's probably going to be the shortest episode we ever do because there's just not a lot of info on it. But there's plenty of conversation that can be had. Everything's vague. There's no full names, and even sometimes the full names change depending on what source you look at.
The movies were based on the true story, though, right?
Okay, so that's also going to be an episode of this show. All right. I'm sorry, dude. I have so much shit to just talk about. I want people to hear me. The Warner Brothers actually recently got sued and they settled for using the term true story. Did you know that?
No.
When it comes to the Warrens.
Holy shit.
You can Google this. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I think we're going to probably spend some time on this eventually. Before Ed and Lorraine died, they sold their life story to someone and then reneged on the deal and then sold their life story to Warner Brothers. And when they started making the Conjuring movies, this guy who was a book publisher went to Warner Brothers and said, hey, you know what? I own the life story. You don't have any right to the life story. You owe me a big chunk of that money because you shouldn't have made those movies without my approval.
Right.
And Warner Brothers says, no, I think we're allowed to do it. And he's like, fine, see you in court. They go to court. And then Warner Brothers says, look, what he sold, hold on, I want to make sure I get this part right because this is where it gets confusing. She did in fact sign this contract. We can't dispute that. She signed the contract, but she signed over fictional embellished version of her life story, a novelization to this guy. What we're doing is the true story, and we market it as the true story. This judge says you have 1 year to convince me that ghosts exist. Starting now. If this is a true story, you have to convince me that everything you have said is the truth. Brilliant. Fucking brilliant.
That's going to be good.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, settled out of court. We don't really know what happened. But basically, they're probably having to pay this guy a big chunk of change. But I mean, just I when I heard that, I was like, this is fucking amazing. This is so great. And this judge just was like, you're full of shit. I'm not playing along with this. So there you go. So anyway, enough of that nonsense. And we all want to go eat dinner. We all want to go jerk off, whatever people do on Friday nights. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I understand this has been dense. It has been a lot of information. I probably should have spaced this out to do 5 or 6 episodes, but I'm sick of fucking talking about this. I want to move on, and I hope you all can understand that. But we are going to have a follow-up in which, if you do have questions, please feel free to let us know, ask us. We will be glad to talk about it. And also look out for I'm going to be dropping a video soon on a true life, non-paranormal, non-supernatural story about a very, very creepy doll in order to kind of get you primed for Annabelle. So all that being said, thank you so much for everyone contributing. Thank you for everyone who has shown support. I love and appreciate every one of you. It's too bad we're not in the city. I'd blow every one of you. Hey, just too bad. Sorry. I really would. And whatever I couldn't do, Corn would pick up the slack.
Oh,
yeah. Corndiff, please, what would you like to plug? Go nuts.
I'm going to go to the website this time, dirtdolphin.com.
Wait, what? What is that?
It's the merch store for my YouTube channel.
Dirt Dolphin? Oh.
Dirtdolphin.com.
Dirt Dolphin. I'm going to write that down. Dirtdolphin.com.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I saw you posted a shirt. Is that I didn't even think to look if it was your merch or if you just saw
that's not mine. That's
okay.
One I've got from somewhere else.
I was really going to commend you. I was like, that's good. That's really good.
No, it was a good design.
And talk about your shows with Granny and Chops, please.
Yeah. Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. We do a show. And I don't know, we just kind of bullshit for about 2 hours or until we get tired of it.
It's, it's really funny that there are just times where I really crave structure to a podcast, and there are times that I do not.
Right.
There's times that I do not want structure, and when those times come, I am definitely in your chat. Hey man, thank you so much for being here, folks. Kind of a big announcement is that Corndiff is now going to be a permanent fixture on the show, and we've had a great time doing this, and Corndiff gives me the right amount of attention and also indifference. the right combination that I like, and he's a funny SOB. So we are very happy to have him on here. So look forward to Corndiff being on here. And
glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And let's keep our fingers crossed for that special guest, because if it works out, it's actually going to put a lot of rumors to bed.
Stuttering John, isn't it?
No, it's someone who you've been confused for.
Flea?
You know who I'm talking about.
I do.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Please check me out. Check out my channel for other videos. Again, keep a lookout for something I got dropping, Luigi Greenberg's Strange World. And check me out on Twitter, Papa_Electrico. Have a great weekend, everyone. You're all awesome. I'm trying to think of something encouraging and uplifting to say, but I'm just tired.
Do you want me to look up a motivational quote?
Oh, please, that'd be perfect. Yes.
Okay, stall for about 10 seconds.
I hope that I get to eat tacos for dinner tonight. I don't know about anybody else. Okay,
hey,
got one? Great.
I got one. Everyone, remember, opportunities don't happen. You create them.
Yeah, think about that. Have a great weekend, everybody.
That's right, it sucks.